to our resource tool to help him out with that. But I was explaining to him, we talked about a couple of months ago the ECPI partnership with ISC Squared, this chapter, and they printed out some of the pamphlets that talk about the discount. So if any of you are interested in attending ECPI for your associate's, master's, associate's, bachelor's, or master's degree, you get registration fees are waived, and they offer a discount for tuition, as well as a 10, 20, and 30% discount for certification. So if you're interested in any of that and you want the details, that's this one right here. If you do not have an ISC Squared certification, but you do need CPEs for the other they have a lot of come grab a certificate of attendance so that you can get those. And then there's some others that James is much more familiar with.
It's just child safety, data breach, connecting to the Internet of Things, PII information. And there's a few left of the CISP sample test just for educational purpose.
Can we get a moment of silence, please? Granger attended. I'm just busting your job.
It's all right, so did John.
Do that unless you got an opportunity.
They change them every year. Yeah.
I also think it's more quiet. If you have chips or are planning on getting chips, I'd just opening them now where the person with Dan is speaking. You don't want to be the guy or gal in the back there staring at Mike, we have the Zoom up.
Yeah.
So another thing to point out is we have Zoom. This will be the 15th month where we've done Zoom. So all of the sessions that we do are recorded. So if you're a member of the chapter, we put them up on our actually don't be a member, it's on YouTube, so they're available on YouTube. So this part right here is not going to get it. But if you can't make it to an event and you want to attend virtually, dial in via Zoom. We are working on the audio, but for whatever it's worth, we're going to be getting audio and maybe better video based on some of the comments that we've got. But we had a low attendance on that. That doesn't mean we don't want you to come in person, but we recommend and highly suggest that folks do that. We are considering whether or not.
Got 4 on there now.
We do have 4. Okay, so we have 4 people on there tonight. 4 more than we had last month. 2 more than we had the month before. We have had some months that we've had 6 people on. So just if it's not utilized, then it doesn't make sense for us to get anything for it. So just want to make sure that folks are taking advantage of it because it's your dues that pay for those types of things.
Yeah, we do encourage you to come to next month's event. We're using a new venue. It's going to be at the Chesterfield Library off of Courthouse Road by the fire station. That's where that is. We are going to be having a vendor Extra Hop come in. They'll be sponsoring the night for the chapter. So they'll be bringing in food. So make sure you come hungry for that.
I'll be back to Congress by next week.
Where's We're doing next month's meeting before Congress.
What other housekeeping things? So if you haven't been to this facility, the restrooms are as kind of, if you were to go out that door and keep going straight, there's a hallway. They'll be on the left-hand side if you get to the restroom. Or going out that way. Trash cans are up at the front. You see the place cleaner than we found it, so let's not make the mess when we come back. I'll let you check the calendar. Okay.
Well, Roxanne, if you want to come on forward. Roxanne is our conference chair for our upcoming October 18th blockchain conference that the chapter is helping kick off this year, which is the second annual. And Roxanne will share a little bit more information about the conference and why, as security professionals, it's important for us to understand what blockchain technology is.
So I'm here for your interactive session to kick off this meeting. So everybody get out your phones for me, please. I know you have them. Go to your calendar, go to October 18th. Mark that date, reserve that date right now. And then I want you to open up your browser and go to rbabc.org. rbabc.org. RBA for Richmond, BC for blockchain. That's where you can go to get tickets. And that's where you can go to check out our schedule. And you can see that this very chapter that you're a member of is presenting the one and only blockchain conference for the Richmond metro area. So you guys are part of history. And why, you're asking, should I go as a security professional? Well, because blockchain is going to be just as integrated to your daily lives as your phones that you have in your hand. And it's only a matter of a few years. Statistics are saying, Gartner statistics say that by 2023, over 2 trillion supply chain goods and services will be using blockchain, moved using blockchain. 2 trillion. And who isn't involved here today in some sort of supply chain activity? Your waters, your cups, your sodas, your plates, your clothes. Everything in this room is part of the supply chain. So that's why you need to attend. And we're going to be hosting a tech side and a business side. So for all you folks that are thinking, I don't really care about the business decisions, I do what my bosses tell me to do, that's okay. We have a tech side as well. We'll have developers. We'll talk to you about how you code in blockchain. We'll have folks that are actually doing it now. And then we're going to end the conference with a showcase. So you can say, okay, well, what are the cool things of blockchain and who's doing it now? We're going to have Hope, our very speaker here, talk about how blockchain is going to be used in elections to secure our elections. We're going to have someone talk about how blockchain is used for social impact and philanthropy. We're going to have someone talking about how blockchain is used for government services, how to protect our privacy. We're going to have some PhDs and really smart people talking about how blockchain is used just in general for security and to secure our infrastructure, including our energy grid. So we've got lots of great speakers, lots of great topics. Make sure you buy your ticket and ask any one of us. We've got a special discount code, and we'll also have, someone was asking about a student ticket. We'll have up shortly a conference only ticket available with the student discount that'll bring the ticket down to $50. So I am the conference committee chair. My name is Roxanne Esch. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to email me directly. You can email anyone in the team here as well. You guys have any questions? Did you mark the date? You went to RBABC, got it saved? All right, well, we really would like you to attend and to be there, one, to support your professional community and to support us. So even if you're not really convinced that you need to know anything about blockchain and you don't believe me, still come and support your group. Thanks, guys.
All right. Our speaker tonight is Dan. He's the Information Security Officer for the Department of Elections, Virginia Department of Elections. He's had over 20 years experience in IT. The last 10 years, he has been in a leadership role, specifically working in network engineering and information security. And he has served 15 years in the U.S. Air Force. Appreciate that. And Dan enjoyed outdoor recreation activities, including boating, camping, and snow sports.
Come on, man. Most of you in the winter,
Okay.
and I'll give you a lesson. Pick your choice, skiing or snowboarding.
Okay. Thanks, bud.
Thank you. So as Jamie mentioned, I'm the chief information officer, not the information security officer, sorry. Michelle is an information security officer, we all know here. I think most of you guys know her. She keeps me out of trouble in most cases. Glad you all can make it out. Real quick, who here is certified in some form or fashion in information security? That's a good crowd. Good crowd. So y'all are already smarter than me. I just want to throw that out there. And I think I told you, like, I don't know. I don't even have a I don't know. I don't have a CIS at the moment, but I'm going to get one day. I have a CISM. I'm a soccer trader, right? But I've been doing some form of fashion of IT since I was 15. I was 15 years old. Started working in what they now call the Geek Squad. That's why it wasn't Geek Squad back then. And I got an A+ cert when I was like 15, and I was like, I'm cool. I know computer stuff, right? A lot's changed since then. I went to the military, and when I went to the military, I was kind of mad because I wanted to cyber something or another. And everyone wanted to do cyber something or another. So guess what happened? I became a cop. So it was a weird transition. But that's how I actually got into information security, because I still maintained all my network engineering background that I had kind of built. And next thing you know, I found myself working in a classified environment realm about, trying to figure out how to protect, those environments. And it was pretty strict. It's like you don't want the bad guy getting in there. Bad guy gets in, somebody can be held accountable, and accountable usually means jail time in the classified realm. So I learned InfoSec principles quick, even when there wasn't best practices out there, if you will. So anyway, like David said, last 10 years I've been in some form of fashion of a leadership role, and I find it hard sometimes. We were speaking about this the other night, as a matter of fact, the balance between operations and security. As a CIO, my primary goal is to keep the lights on, keep our information systems up for the users, right? And in most cases, organizations are doing the separation of duties. We have a security person and like an ops leader that plug it out. They both report to the CEO, or in my case, the commissioner for the Department of Elections. It's a good practice to follow. But I really think that more of the operations side needs to start coming on board with security mentality and be part of the solution and not the whole fighting. But I'm not going to talk about too much of that today. I just kind of wanted to throw that out there. That's always on my mind, right? Security, even that's not great. So with that said, I'm going to talk a little bit about defense in depth. And I actually spoke about this at the COVID conference. If any of you were in attendance, I don't know who was here. Who was at COVID in the room? Did anybody see me talk about this? I'm sorry if I'm boring you if you saw it. This is the second time you're seeing this.
I'll leave now.
Okay. I'm going to start off, talk a little bit about history and then we're going to have some conversation started. I'm not going to sit up here and preach to y'all about defense in depth. I want to have a conversation about this. I want to hear your guys' thoughts. For you young individuals in the room who are not certified and are learning this stuff for the first time, I want to ask all the questions you can. The more the better, the merrier. And I want to be collaborative, bottom line. So, and if you're shy, I promise I will call you out, because I'm shy too, and I'm up here in front of y'all, and I don't like it. I'm really happy to be here, actually. So anyway, I'll just start right away and start talking about defense in depth. And the history of defense in depth originated from the warfighter perspective. How do we keep the bad guys from, getting into our castle? And it's been around for centuries, right? So I have a slide here, 216 BC. The concept is not new in any way, shape, or form. We utilize it, to this day in military operations, and obviously it's becoming a bigger and bigger deal over the past 15 years, I'd say, in the cyber world. So it's a proven thing, and that's the point of, we talk about the history. there are some differences between the military and how we deal with cyber operations. Back in the day, in the military side of things, we would establish defense in depth to kind of lure the bad guy into a trap so you can pound him, right? So if you think about a big wall around a resource, a significant resource, that's important. Maybe you're weaker in certain areas. So you find the areas that you're weakest in, and you let the bad guy in that weak area, and then you surround them with your forces, and you take them out, right? That's a huge difference between the cyber side of things and military operations. When I was in the military, my career field was MP, and actually, more specifically, it was Air Force Security Force. Our job in Air Force Security Forces was air-based defense, first and foremost. Although we pulled people over, we went to the domestic violence scenes, we dealt with murders, all that. But our primary focus, especially in wartime, was air-based defense. And how do we do air-based defense? We call it integrated based defense, IBD. That was the terminology. That's the first time I had actually really heard of, this defense kind of methodology. And what we did was we looked at, an aircraft. An aircraft's a resource. We looked at our command and control facilities as well as our comm facilities, and we ranked them at, by their priority and what the risk of losing one of those things were. And we established layers around those based off of that. So we had an idea of where we needed to spend our money, where we needed to put our additional troops, things of that nature. And that's kind of how it worked. And I started learning early on, that it makes sense. It's common sense, in my opinion, at that point in time. So, we did it for a long time. I mean, everything had fixed improvement. So all the aircraft you see there, you got a stealth fighter, you got Air Force One, you got F-16 there. All those aircraft have different what we call priority levels. And when I talk about how we prioritize them, that's what's more important. Obviously the presidential bird there, the Air Force One, is a little bit more important than the F-16 sitting next to it for reasons, right? And the stealth fighter was a black ops program for years and years and years. And they want to keep that thing quiet. They did a lot of different methodologies around that. So I guess the point of all this historic detail is that why can't we use those concepts and impose them? And I think the NSA first began using them, and I don't know if the NSA first started using them, let's say 20 or 30 years ago. I might be wrong on that, but it was roughly in that time when they said, well, when they had big mainframes, how do we protect these things? So what we do to make them more secure. The security wasn't as big of a risk back then, but they still were trying to figure out a way that they could protect it, especially again, classified realms around, military and intelligence related areas. So they started implementing these things, and they said very specifically that they were not going to copy the DoD and how they were doing things with military defense. They were going to say, okay, we're going to create layers, but we're not going to create like ways to suck in the bad guys or like funny pops and things like that. They're not going to do that. They're just going to create independent layers of security and hoping that if one fails, then the next one will stop them. And that was kind of the concept. So today we have that's depth, and the application of it is around say the application of defensive depth uses a series of different controls: your physical, your technical, your administrative. Most of you in here probably know. Who has not heard of this concept? It's okay to raise your hand. At least somebody thinks something else. Who did not know that the different use of those three controls, together forms that defense? And I'm not asking to call anybody out. I just try to gauge where I go with this conversation. So, technical controls, that's firewalls, things like that, right? Physical controls, that's your locks on your door, And then your administrative controls is stuff like training, user training. If you have enough of those built up in layers, at one point in time, you're going to put up a pretty good fight to your threat actors, right? At least that's the idea. So that's kind of how it's kind of laid out. I have a big fancy chart. I don't know if you guys can see this, but it kind of breaks it down. If you look at it, it kind of looks like a little bit of an onion. I always look to compare that step to like an onion. You have different layers, three different layers. You have the outside, and then your asset in the middle. If you do all these fancy things, eventually you're going to deter the bad guy away. There's a lot of different tools out there. There's a lot of different controls we can put in place, and a lot of training we can conduct for our users that would essentially, again, at least it's not completely stop, slow down enough to detect the threat, and maybe put a stop to that individual threat. So, how many here have ever used, a firewall that has intrusion detection? Okay, what happens? What happens when you get an alert? Your same tool gives you an alert. What do you do?
Figure out how I can tune it out so I don't have to.
That's a good answer. That's a great answer. But in figuring out what you're going to do with it, you're going to evaluate what the threat is. And I'm going to jump 5 steps ahead and just say, okay, you identify it as something bad, you're going to block it, right? You block the ID, whatever, right? And that's another component. So anyway, this is kind of an eye chart, but at the same time, it is definitely a good way, a good visual graphic to explain, or show, how these different areas can stop the threat, and all the different facets. I have another cool chart I found, and this is dear to me as a network guy. I was like, we have something that shows as depth, but network level, not just network level. And this kind of shows, different ways that you can insert an extra layer in between. So I'll go to the middle screen right here. You have a bunch of servers, right? And services. Right here, we have a firewall, and we've also created a DMZ. That's now creating additional layers between, the outside and the inside, right? Pretty basic concept for most people, but that's practicing defensive depth at a simple level. I mean, again, you can add a lot of different things. You can add a lot of different tools, and you can also put a lot of training for your users, which in my mind, and ask Michelle, right, Michelle? How much do I complain about users and lack of user training?
All the time. Even after they get trained, they still do things.
Right.
And if you go, being that a lot of the kids in this room are in the cyber academy, it'll probably be good to talk about like port security and network security, because that would relate to them. What, port security?
Yeah.
You're a network person.
Yeah, so little things like you guys, what Michelle just said, if you have a switch, right? Let's say it's a switch, and you want to make sure that corporate-owned devices are the only devices that can connect to your Ethernet jacks. You add things like 802.1x, right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't think that one. 802.1x protocol for, what's that? Yeah, thank you.
You also want to put them on separate VLANs, because you don't want your, let's say, accountants talking to your admins.
I'm going to get to that in a minute.
Sorry.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So, and I'll jump into that. Sometimes it's very hard to protect systems. I know some of you guys, some of the professionals that are in the room that are working in cybersecurity right now, deal with things like Windows 7 end of life, right? Coming up. And the license and for January 2020. They will no longer release security patches. In 2008, yeah, 2008, and 2012, not R2. Not R2.
SQL, I think SQL.
Well, there's a bunch of products jumping off to the library. So what do you do when you have an application that has only been built for that, and you can't go to Windows 10, or you can't go to, Server 2016 or 2019? What do you do? Was that? I like that risk analysis, but then what?
Yeah, senior management side.
Mitigating.
That's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one. But ultimately, there's security controls you can put in place as part of the risk management process, right? Michelle was alluding to network segmentation. Network segmentation is not the end-all be-all, but it is an effective tool to create an additional layer of defense. I was working before I became CIO for LAX. I was working as a director of IT for a hospital system out in Roanoke, Southwest Virginia. And we have all sorts of medical devices. And these medical devices, the vendors, they build the software, X-ray machines, whatnot. They build the software and they never update it, right? And no business leader wants to spend millions of dollars to upgrade a working system. Operationally, it works, right? Just because the old system doesn't support the new operating system, right? That's always a struggle. So network segmentation was a big deal for us in that environment, and I think that there's a lot of environments like that where we find specifically within healthcare. Who else has got some examples for me? Thanks.
One example, personally, I found I went to my ATM and found it in the middle of a Windows XP.
How did that make you feel inside?
Very sad.
It's like crushing, right? Yeah. Hopefully they have segmentation.
I was in this point, but I really like, I'm a little bit, I like XP, so I haven't controlled it either. But
Yeah, we just had this actually doing like
right
that.
out there, and I'm a not person, so I'm like,
Right.
and all that, maybe it's on.
Could be,
I
potentially.
got that all together.
No, I definitely understand. I mean, I think that somebody somewhere, somehow in this room has come across an issue, whether you realize it or not, a tool you use or something that is not, been upgraded appropriately.
Yeah, I'm right in the middle of that. So we just did a major upgrade of software. So we discovered that kiosks out in the client side that don't support the a Java version. I think is what it's all about. So we
I hate
take-
Java, by the way. I just put that out there.
Well,
I know.
I didn't write the software. But I think it's like Java 4 and the system control 4.
It happens, right? It happens quite often. And
I heard this before. Very challenging. And you have to be able to I don't know if I.
That's the
Yeah.
Navy.
No, that's
That's the Navy, yeah.
That is true, so I will say
That is
this.
true.
As a military member, I had actually been to Washington State, the Microsoft headquarters. They love the military, and the military loves Microsoft. The military doesn't love Microsoft. There's a huge partnership. So if the DoD says, we want this, Microsoft will generally do it because they're one of the highest paying customers. So it is true. And they do offer it, even in dealing with some of the issues that the previous role I served in, we reached out to Microsoft and got a quote to see how long it would, or how much it would cost, how long they would support us additionally beyond the lifetime. And it was more than I, as a business leader, more than I would hack off on, honestly, because, right. So risk mitigation, is a key to things like that, and how we mitigate mitigate risk. is to add these different layers. So segmentation is one of them. Training is another. You know, you can, I keep saying training over and over again. You're going to hear me say that like 40 million times.
And they still click on the link.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So there's another piece of that too. Accountability, right? Who has issues with accountability around their users? No. Okay, that's a topic for another day. But it is important as part of the training process to establish a layer of accountability. This kind of came up in COVID, actually. You know, when we talk about training, and you know, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. You've heard that before. It's definitely true. So anyhow, good slide, right? So here's the motivations. We kind of already talked through them a little bit, and I'm not going to read word for word off the screen, but what in your mind, other than what's listed here, when we're going to talk about, what kind of other motivations would you want to employ defense in depth techniques? And I don't care if you guess, especially for this group over here, younger individuals who are in class, or yeah, are you guys in class? Yeah, take some guesses if you want. I'm going to give you guys first dibs at answering that, actually. Go ahead.
I feel like financial reasons obviously your system is usually measurable by outside versus outside actors. Obviously, it's not safe. There's a lot of evidence you don't trust your service provider.
That's definitely true. That is probably one of the biggest motivators, honestly. And nobody wants to get sued. Nobody wants to lose business, right? That's pretty important. Yes, ma'am.
Legal compliance.
What's that?
Legal compliance.
Legal compliance, yes, very much so. We have a lot of different things these days. Data that's classified in who knows what. HIPAA, PCI, so HIPAA for healthcare, PCI for financial transactions like credit card machines. We have PII, personally identifiable information, and you name it.
PHI.
PHI.
FTI.
What else?
FERPA.
Huh?
FERPA.
What's that?
Federal student data.
Educational.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, you also
Yeah,
have
but that's more of that's not specific to a certain class of data. That's an auditory. That's true. Yeah. Right. Most financial industries use that for not the bigger picture, like market data, things like that. Correct.
You also have loss of consumer confidence, which also leads into the financial implications over a long period of
Right.
time. Because
Right.
nobody's going to do business with a company that gets hacked.
Right. Anyone here work with Capital One? Say anything. Nobody?
Nobody will admit it.
Oh. What happened, man? What happened?
I wasn't there.
You weren't there.
That's why it's on your phone.
So let's talk about that.
That's why you don't go on
Right?
vacation.
Does anybody know why that happened? It went to the cloud. Yeah. But the cloud is not bad. The cloud is not bad. You're gonna really, I'm gonna start crying if you start talking crap about the cloud.
That just debates the whole schematic you had a couple of
To a degree.
It does not.
Well, you got, so there's logical versus physical separation and things of that
I thought it
nature.
was.
I'm
No,
not completely positive.
Wasn't it an insider?
It was a contractor who was in Amazon and just got outside of our own container.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
You're looking at a bunch of data just hanging out.
Yeah, it's the cloud. You don't know who's searching your data.
I think that's what happened. There was a few breakdowns there, so obviously there's a bunch of insider threats are a big deal. And that is the root cause, an insider threat. Now, maybe I take that back. It's not really the root cause. The root cause was the actual failure was lack of technical controls and administrative controls. Like when you separate an employee, what do, right? Are you revoking access properly? Things of that nature. I think it was a combination of both of them from what I've read. They did take individuals' access away, but there was some remnant left over.
So data was left out in the public, like it wasn't secure. Anybody could restrict it.
So you leverage for knowledge.
That's correct.
Yeah. So that's the issue. What?
Because I'm gonna say, years ago, when I actually still did server work, one of the biggest issues I've had, and anybody that's ever worked on servers could probably state this, is somebody would be separated from the company and the last person they'd inform is the IT department. They let HR know, the whole department would know, and, you know, every couple of weeks, we would go through to see who's been logging in and send out an email. Oh yeah, they quit. Their last day was a month ago or 3 weeks ago or.
Yeah. So what failure is that from a defense and depth strategy? Administrative controls, right? Processes are key. Michelle will tell you, have a sidebar with her after that. I'm a pretty process-driven person. I used to hate process, by the way, back in the day when I was younger. I was like, I just want to get the work done. I hate all these red tape, bureaucracy crap. But then as I got older, a little bit more mature, I started thinking, you know what? Things like the description you just provided, Michelle, are important. And if we don't follow it step by step, we have inherent breakdowns. And I think that's a pretty big takeaway for everyone in the room who's not already familiar with that. Who hasn't seen a breakdown?
That never happens in IT.
You can say not a book rule if you're not.
There wasn't.
So yeah, that's staggering, right? And so when I showed up to elect, I noticed, you know, we're pretty strong. I can honestly sit here and say that the state of the Department of Elections from an IT security perspective is pretty strong. Other states did succumb to Russia, threat actors back in 2016, and no votes were changed in any state anywhere, but there was multiple states that were breached. Virginia was not one of them, but they were scraping us. They were trying to find a way.
They're always trying to find a way.
Yeah, but they didn't get in. But that doesn't mean that my organization doesn't need to improve its process. So that's always a focus of mine as a leader. Again, is to ensure that these processes exist. When we talk about these defense and depth strategies and using technical, administrative, and physical controls, that's essential. A combination of all three, multiple checkboxes within each, right? So anyway, does anybody in here have a good story on where defense and depth added value to their organization, or something that they liked about it, that they want to talk about? Come on. I'll give you a minute to think about that. Come on, somebody.
I've been talking a lot, but I'll go again. I work for a Fortune 500 company with over 400,000 employees.
Capital One.
Not gonna tell. Somebody in here knows, it's on my resume, but anyway. When I first got hired there, because you mentioned ACPI, it's a new career for me. I did the college thing and got a career and didn't like it. I did something else, really loved it. And anyway, so I was lucky enough to get on to this. It wasn't a SOC, wanted a cyber response, which is like, I'm gonna get that. But I got all the searches. If you're gonna use the product, I really appreciate it. It helps you get the but anyway, so the first like month when I started working there, the place like blew up. It was total red. Because so what happened is that a threat actor friended a turbine operator in a power plant on Facebook, and she was a sexy girl. And they talked for like 6
I don't know if you're allowed to say that terminology.
I can't get it. I can't say it. This is the way they go.
HR violation.
Yeah.
No, my dad's actually an HR. I have to be warned. Like, you just made me uncomfortable. So just putting that out. My apologies. But anyway, that was part of the act. So they got this guy hooked. Like, oh wow, this girl's interested in stuff. And for New Year's Eve, she sent him a flash animation after New Year's Eve. And our defenses got lit up, and it compromised his machine. And we saw it, it alerted on us when it was growing and trying to get to the server, of the local server that
One of those staying countries. I'm not supposed to say that either, I don't think.
But yeah, so like the first layer is you, right?
Absolutely.
And our other stuff, alarms and stuff. I was so new, I had nothing to do with it, so don't come up to me and talk about it. I was like still learning what handshake was.
It was.
Yeah, it's kind of more like an administrative. There's like refugee settlement. They had some white nationalists in one of the states that did resettlement. They were trying to volunteer, but because we do background checks on all of our volunteers, they were denied like the ability to volunteer with us. And then later it was found that they were actually plotting some sort of attack that we had to do with them. That was sort of that.
Yeah, and you know, that it doesn't, remember, we don't just, firewalls aren't everything, guys. It does boil down to simple things like background checks. Sure, you guys.
Yeah, so I can give you an example of when defense fails at a fundamental level. So I worked very recently as cyber operations officer in the Virginia Guards 91st. And one of the missions that we had was to, on occasion, run vulnerability and risk assessments for state resources. One of the missions that we conducted involved running a vulnerability assessment, sort of a penetration test, but not as invasive against a small municipal area. What we found right away was that there was a fundamental flaw in this particular organization's approach to the utilization of technology. So they had disparate components that were functioning to provide in-depth security in multiple layers. So they had some physical controls, they had some administrative controls, they had some technical controls in place. All of them were good quality control systems, but they weren't comprehensive and they weren't
Laid out.
They weren't configured properly.
Right.
And then they weren't utilized properly.
And that kind of goes to this, doesn't it?
It does. Ultimately, what it comes down to is a checkbox out. I've noticed this in most organizations are looking to meet their compliance goals, but they're not putting a good faith effort into meeting those goals. They're only looking for face value victories.
Right. So, in experience as most people, we have an else the air side. You know, have an ORI, whatever, bad cop will come out, major fan will come out, do an inspection, all we would be just, we have auditing turned on, check, yes, you know, like that, and that's not exactly.
You have the capacity.
You got to think a little bit outside the box and think about you. As a cop, and I was an investigator as well as a cop, you always want to think about what the bad guy's going to do, right? When you're interviewing your suspects and things like that, you got to say, if I was this guy, what would I do? And that's very important in the cyber realm too, right? So as any cyber team, cybersecurity professional should be always thinking about what is my most vulnerable thing, and how would I, if I was a bad guy, would I take advantage of that? If you think about that, that's when you start thinking about how you lay out your controls effectively, right? Yeah. Sir.
If I can steal a second to just try to make a point, particularly to my students here.
Mm-hmm.
He's talking about avoiding the checkbox mentality. I can't tell you how often I hear people say, but what's the right answer? There is no right answer. The right answer is to understand what the heck you're doing.
It's always relevant.
So you've got to think about it, and you've really got to understand how all the pieces fit together. You can't know too much about this stuff.
And teamwork's essential too, because not one individual, no matter how much training they have, no matter how many certifications and letters after the signature block, has all the right answers. There are constantly things that I learn every day, or things that I didn't think of when I'm developing strategies or things of that nature. I think it's very important. I can't emphasize this enough to any cyber professional that you have to work as a team. And Michelle hears me say this all the time in my shop, for all my direct reports, all my directors and managers. I say every day, and it's important because everybody brings something different. Everyone thinks about things a little bit differently. So I think it's really key that you use a buddy system, peer review, right? When we're doing this, not one person has the keys, right? To everything, all
You also learn a lot when you listen to other people. I mean, Dan could probably tell you the same way I can. When we first came to elections, it was overwhelming. This is a completely different environment than anything you've ever worked in. So you have to learn the whole elections infrastructure. You have to learn the applications they have there. You have to learn the different departments and what the different people do, how they interact with the different localities, what they do there, and how they interact with our systems. It's like that every place you go. You just have to learn the environment and everything around you. It's good to listen and interact with the people that you'll be working with. Because I know most of us in IT like our cold room where there's nothing but servers in there.
Just to emphasize your point, that's important not only for everyone working at the technical level, but everyone working at the leadership level as well. If leadership isn't willing to listen to the guides they're getting from their technicians,
that happens quite often. And I have a huge problem with that, because
Yes.
Whatever.
You weren't supposed to jump on
I gotta okay, guys.
Okay, you come with me.
Yeah, I don't know, man. This is like the fourth time he's heckled me today. It's true though. I mean, I deal with this as well with my leadership. Nobody wants to shell out big money to fix something, right? And even some intermediate measures, compensatory measures, things of that nature, defense in depth, still probably cost something, even if it's just the manpower to implement, right? And that's it's always a hard sell to a business. The good news is that every time somebody like Capital One, sorry man, poor you, every time Capital One happens, that it makes it a little bit easier to swallow for a business leader to allocate funds towards this because the risk thing goes a little bit more in the cybersecurity professional favor, right? So I hate to see organizations get breached, and I hate to see the fallout, and I really hate when the media just goes crazy about it because you weren't there, you don't know, you don't do this job every day, but it is very, 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 very important that we learn from the mistakes, right? The mistakes we made, the mistakes from others. When we're implementing, defense in depth, there's no right way, and there's but there could be a lot of wrong ways, right? And it all is tailored. There's not one size fits all when we're implementing these strategies. I think that's been kind of alluded to at this point. But anyhow, one thing I'm going to throw out that I really like, I mean, simple things, cost effective, maybe a little bit more training for some simple things like multi-factor authentication. I don't understand why there's still organizations out there that have applications and tool sets that are not using multi-factor, because in most cases it's pretty easy to implement from a how much cost and benefit you get from it from a risk management perspective. I do understand that sometimes it burdens on users, but there are definitely something. We did that right before I got there, and I was like, this is a no-brainer, right? Sure.
I know why some of those organizations don't employ it. It's because they refuse to upgrade the equipment to the newer technology to support it.
Right. That does sometimes cost money. It depends on what application you're running, how old it is, things like that. There are some considerations there. But at this point in time, I would say that there's a variety of tools out there that are compatible with a lot of different things. And Michelle, you can probably speak more to it.
Well, I was going to say the multi-factor actually saved us because we had one of the users in the locality got breached and had all of her usernames and passwords on her desktop. And we could clearly see they were trying to get in, but because they didn't have the second factor, they couldn't make it in.
Right. Yeah.
So that actually saved us from being hacked.
That device was ransomware through a phishing thing. So that was definitely the threat is real, if you will, but the multi-factor was a good example there of successful defense of that. And it's not complicated. Because, I go back to the other slide with all that fancy stuff, right? All these different layers and all these different tools, administrative, technical, physical controls, right? There are so many things you can do, but you don't necessarily need to implement all of those things. No organization, unless you're, again, maybe Fortune 500, and you don't want to be in the news, and you shell out money towards all those different things. But for an organization like a government entity, state government, elections, we don't have a lot of money. I mean, I wouldn't say we're like broke, but we don't have all that much money to do half the things I want to do. It's the reality of the way the world is, right? But that doesn't mean we can't pick what's going to be most effective for us, right? Yeah. A little conversation around that. Any other great ideas besides what has already been talked about when it comes to successful?
It's more of the management. Thursday, under the culmination of if you get your GEH, your security plus, project plus, there's like business processes, continuity planning, and stuff. It all rolls it up in the plus. So I think it just made sense for me to take it and have all of this stuff. But maybe down the road. So why I mentioned that is because I'm thinking about my seat and your seat as an executive. And where I'm working now is going through a major, like, the game bought by a foreign company, with all this control process. And so the IF manager of the contract agency wants to have PISA, you probably heard it, is like quantifying the risk in kind of mentioned that, where you figure out what's the probability of them breaking here, how easy can I catch it, how much does it cost, why the priority. It's just a way to quantify it. But that's where I'm going with this, because of the technique. It's a lot. Like when I sit in the console and I'm trying to catch it, that's great. I mean, I'm a left brain into on the thinker, but I'm telling you. So the control of the checkbox, it's there to detect, because if I don't do the checkbox and something happens, I get to my career is over and all this other stuff. But the managers that are focusing on having the checkbox and people wired them, this So, I don't have a real overarching point other than this balance between the parts. That's why I love it. There is no right answer. If you get into accounting practices as they've been doing them for like 700 years, there's no real change. You know? But this thing, you've got to wake up every day, you've got to read newsfeed, vulnerabilities that are being announced and the backyards and how they're operating. That's something you get if you go to checkbox. I've been in places that are
So, checkboxes are, the way I look at them is they're guardrails. That's what I look at. They're guardrails to make sure you don't go off the side of a cliff. And you nailed it on the head with, if the threat landscape changes 5 seconds. I mean, probably milliseconds, I don't know. And that's why I think this topic is so important because, okay, X threat exists here, right? We apply Y control to counter that threat. And because it changes so often with this principle, you're not tearing down the wall and rebuilding the wall. You're just maybe adding a mortar in the bricks between the bricks in some cases.
We talked about systems earlier. I just wanted to but like there's also like an office politics ecosystem that you should not neglect, like ghostly happy hours and friends, like you kind of have to sell them on IT and information security because like they'll listen to you if they like know you, not by like the IT guy, but like or whoever, right? Like he's a nice guy, right? Like okay, so yeah.
That's a good point. I mean, establishing relationships with people establish trust, right? When you establish trust, oftentimes you can get a little bit more than if that trust doesn't exist. That's a good point.
Money.
Yeah. We'll buy some more firewalls.
Yeah. Do you see the overall talent shortage in IT security being a limiting factor for some companies being able to implement, like, I won't say implement DID, but effective DID?
Yes. Specifically, the shortage is, you can find a warm body, put it that way, but a warm body that truly understands it, which has got me really excited. You guys are in this group here. I just want to say that. But because when you start absorbing this stuff now, and you keep adapting with it, it's the quality of people. So yes, and it makes it difficult to implement these things because again, you have to have a good global.
It goes way back to like Taylor back in the 90s. We had a term called the people seasoning. Because I know if you want to take an IT class, I know.
See, I'm the exact opposite. I suck at tests. I'm not gonna lie. It's amazing I have a master's degree. It really is. Amazing I have a high school diploma, to be honest with you guys. But that said,
but you can find the brain to come for
right.
Any time.
Like and I don't think
study the test, run the test.
I don't know if I should go down this road in this audience because I do think that having certifications is good. I think it's a measure of skills. I don't think it's the end all be all.
Well, if you did it right, then like your things that going through the certification process, you'll learn that you might not hit another way. So I've only functioned in 30 years, built the domain from scratch. Where I loaded up the OS onto the machine, built the domain out, and it went put out to the public file. But so that's the thing we are going to say why you don't do the certification process. And it's like the information is like, oh yeah, I remember that, but now you're looking to see how I actually have to do it. But the concept.
Right, and I think that in the InfoSec side of things, there are many areas within InfoSec, right? I mean, somebody who's looking at firewalls versus somebody who's developing policy versus somebody who's doing audits, those are very distinct duties that require a sort of specialization. And in most cases, when I see resumes, I just see cybersecurity generalists. I never see somebody who puts themselves as a true cybersecurity auditor, right? Or a risk management professional
But that
within cyber.
But that comes in the description of what they were doing.
Right. But that makes a difference, though, like in regards to like who you bring on when it comes to the talent stream, right? If your organization needs, again, like somebody that specializes in risk management, well, there's not a lot of those folks out there, or they may have dabbled in it because they took a cert and they had to study up for it, that cert. That does lead to, you might hire that person, but you may not get really what you need.
You need to spend a lot more for it. Because that happens all the time too, when you're looking for somebody who does the role, and you just can't find that person. So you have to hire, the lesser of evils, and then hope that you can train them into that position.
That kind of touch on it. So the answer is yes. Yeah. It does affect.
It's like so, and I do a lot of this stuff. So, and that's one of the things I'm looking at, because, if you have the certification, I'm going to ask a question. Focus on the certification. Information that you should have learned, at least have an idea of, based upon that, what was covered in that paper.
Sorry, I don't need to prolong the conversation in depth, but
Oh, it's good. This is what I felt for.
I would argue that the certification, the realm of certification is sort of reliance on certification that we have in the modern world is part of the problem. I think that we're too reliant on filling higher roles based on the number of pieces of paper that a technician has associated with their name, as opposed to the relevant experience and their ability to apply theory into a real world.
I agree. Again, anybody can take a test, and then I know that over time we've also, most of the major education organizations, the IC Squared, well, IC Squared always done it as long as I know, like the ICP, where you have somebody sign you off, things of that nature, which is great. But anybody can sign anybody off, and my buddy over here has got this title, he can sign me off on it. And I hate to say it like that, but I mean, that could happen, and it does cause issues, because I've had multiple employees that have worked with me who were certified and they were not working. I hate to say it. I mean,
My view of it,
how are you going to do it?
as I mentioned, the whole piece, so I think it sounds like they changed it, but anyway, I thought, hold on, and just because the forces work around it, so I'm not gonna I feel like a surge, it's standardized, like I have the language. When people say like multi-factor authentication, maybe you guys don't know what that means. Well, I mean, you have to study it, right? I mean, that's definitely one of the questions. When you get the language down, it's like a culture language. So there's I think that was actually one of the reasons why I asked Sarah came up with certainly that in standardize the idea. So at least when we say the word, we all know it.
Well, I feel foundation is something
and from a professional standpoint, I've observed this because I've gone around with a lot of the nature of IT is to do a lot of contract work. And I really have a unique position on it. With my adjunct professor at U of R of HR, who specializes in hiring. We worked at their outlet at university, which specializes in HR, and worked at their career development center for years too. And so I know the inside scoop on how managers, what they're dealing with, or a hiring manager, or somebody who doesn't really have a lot of technical capability. So the positive of the search is you at least have a little bit more of a spark plug. And there's another dynamic also. If the manager, the hiring manager hired you and you screw up, it looks bad for the hiring manager. It's hard to hire. One of the worst things that managers is hard that. And so there's a little bit, I'm not saying have to talk to you and hire and stuff just to really how it's you know, how is that supposed to do? So there's a little bit of speed.
It's a balancing act. It really is. I mean, ultimately, this topic can go far reaching. And, you know, again, I've hired a lot of talent over the years. And when I say talent, I mean good talent. But I've also had, you know, some bad hires. And didn't see the warning signs, or they were really good at taking the funk, as they say, you know, and you know, come through an interview and say all the right things, and have all the right certs, and then really you start putting them on the floor and you start seeing them work. Like, I have no idea. And it's particularly hard. We're talking about this. It's particularly hard. I learned in the state. Who in here is state? State government. State. Cool. Virginia, private sector, right to work. I love that. I don't need any reason. I don't need any reason to fire you. But in the state, you get somebody in and pass the probation period, and get rid of them. Also, the point of when you're assessing candidates, like you get 100 candidates, you got to score them. And a lot of entities I see do have their human resources or the HRM, Department of Human Resource Management in the state, do the scoring. These folks, again, they're HR people. They look for the key things and they score top. And I've already had one instance, and just within the past month, where HR scores some people. I look at the resumes myself after they scored them, and I said, this is not right. And it was actually backwards. I had 4 candidates that were qualified for the role. And the number 1 candidate that they put on the score sheet was actually the number 4 when I actually went through it. So there's some discrepancy there. I think it's really important that's an important takeaway for anybody who's ever participating in hiring to really consider, you know, what's going on. Think about, okay, the recruiter sent you these people, or the HR rep sent you these people. I mean, you gotta make your hiring process a little bit intense, if you will, to include real world scenarios. I mean, it's hard, but it's sometimes hard, time constraints and things like that. There are ways that you can determine, and I think that's very important. Even if you have to set up a computer and have them look through a log and figure out what's an anomaly, right? Even if it's something like that, if you're hiring like an auditor. I don't want to get too far off tangent with the topic, but it's definitely a good discussion. Real quick, and we can have more discussion after this. I'm not going to read these out either, but these are some practice recommendations around defense death. And again, I would say a lot of this is really common sense to the degree if you really understand cyber as a whole, cyber, you know, not just security, but think about the operations. I encourage every single cybersecurity professional to think about operations, think about the end user, think about risk. Those are all critical pieces to determining a good defense strategy. I'm not going to be any of this. Okay. So we can talk away now. That's the end of my slideshow.
Okay, let me add a couple points to your discussion. So one of the reasons we founded this chapter is because we saw the need for cybersecurity professionals in the pipeline. And that's why half of our membership are students.
Love it.
We want to mentor and foster that growth into the pipeline. There was a study done by Cybersecurity Ventures, a research company, that by 2021, there will be 3.5 million cyber jobs that will go unfilled due to lack of skills. So keep that in mind. Not only are we facing a shortage in cybersecurity, but we're also having to deal with some of the points that all of you brought up. Anybody can pass a test. And people know that, and they're going and they're studying for a test and getting a cert, but they don't know if you press A plus B, it equals C. They know that, but they don't know the reason behind it, right? These young men and women here are from the Chesterfield Technical Center. They are in the Cisco Networking Academy and the Cyber Patriot program.
And by the way, I want to throw that out there for you guys. After I started my career working in Geek Squad at 5, I don't even know what we called it back then. That was what I did. I grew up in Northern Virginia, well, sort of Northern Virginia, Fredericksburg, Stafford area, and my local community college was Germanna, and my high school had a program with Germanna, at the Cisco cert, and my second major cert after my A+ was my CCNA, thanks to the school and the program that they had at the time. That was a huge jump start. So kudos to you guys for being part of that. Cool stuff.
So I have a question. And I have a question for you, and it's not defense in depth.
That's fine. We can talk about whatever now. Go on. If that's okay with you, Jay. I don't know how much time we have, but
and it's more for the upcoming crowd, the students. So you started off in technology, and then you went into military, a cop. I also started off in technology. Well, that's not true. I was an auto mechanic, and then I was in the Navy, and then I got out and thought computers were great, so I want to do that. I got a networking degree, spent 12 years on a help desk incident management type role, never really did anything security related, and here I am, ISO for an organization. So similar path that sounds like for you maybe. How did you go from being a technical person up to a CIO, and what challenges did you face going from that technical background to that more administrative background?
So this is a long-winded story, by the way. I have a potty mouth. So honestly, I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up, and that's been true for a long time. And I just kind of winged it, you know. So in the military, I actually gained rank really quick, right place, right time. And before I was, who's in the military here? I was an E7 by the time I was 27 in the Air Force. That's part of 35 to 40 is the average sell. And that's not like sound big-headed or anything. I just right place, right time. I found myself dealing with all these responsibilities, dealing with cyber, dealing with actual investigation work, you know, investigating breaches on classified networks, things like that. And I at the time, I didn't, I started losing a lot of my networking skills. So I think at the time I had to figure out where I was going to go when I was getting my degree. I didn't know what to pick. So I said, well, I'm in management now, I might as well stay in management. And when I left the military, I was kind of like, yes, maybe I should do something technical, but I don't know if I'm really as, like, my skill sets are still up to par, but I definitely have a leadership mentality. So I kind of stuck that path at the time, and director, the IT here, there, everywhere. And one of the things I noticed, the biggest challenges was that other technical leaders, counterparts, they didn't really understand. They were too much in the weeds. People people, this is not just a problem between leadership and technical people. I think technical people also need to, put a backup. A lot of times, there'll be a hole, a manager hole or something, and a technical person will be like, well, yeah, it's a pay raise. I'm just going to go there. They don't let go of the technical stuff and start thinking big picture. That's one of the biggest challenges to a jump from tech to leadership. It's the big picture mentality, from my perspective. And I think that I was probably never that great at technology, being at the tech level anyway. And but I thought maybe I was better a leader. So it worked out for me because I've always kind of thought on a forest view, if you will. And that was something really important. The other big piece that I found was a little bit difficult was terminology, right? You can't go to your CEO, commissioner, whatever title is, your COO, any name, whatever C-suite person. You can't go to those folks and talk to them about TCP/IP, firewall this, and yeah, you can't say 2FA to them. Like, what the hell is 2FA? It's again, goes like the military. You can't start using a bunch of crazy military acronyms to civilians. They're like, what? I used to do that with my ex-wife. She's like, what are you talking about? It's the same thing. So if you start to learn ways to communicate what you need, what is happening in a way that doesn't confuse the non-technical folks, you will find yourself successful. And I struggled with that for a little while, and I had a one-star general I reported to. He was a fighter pilot. This guy, all he wanted to do was fly his plane, right? And I went talking to him about this classified network and what we need to do to prevent breaches, and he's like, Dan, stop. Just stop. And I was like, oh, okay. And that's something to take away. But does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Or kind of help the story there?
Indeed, yeah.
That's hard to go into it all, but there's more. Sir.
I think you hit the nail on the head. We can take Cake Streak and make it into business. That's 80%.
And whiteboarding too, by the way. Actually, in my interview for the current role I'm in, the commissioner asked me, how do I go up to the General Assembly and ask them for something and not? And I was like, well, I said kind of the same thing, but I said also whiteboarding. Give me a whiteboard, give me something to draw on, and I'll draw it out. And we can visualize things. Visualizations are one of the easiest for most people to interpret. Some people are not thinkers, like they're not visual. They're more, I don't know, they don't use visuals as well as they can read a book, right? But that which works, put it together in their own head. But most people like visualization, so that was one of the other things I said. Maybe that might have gotten me the job. So.
I won't comment
still
on that. Because I know
That's
your
number 5.
predecessor was.
That's number 5.
They needed somebody good in there, though. They didn't even need us.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to say it's funny to hear you guys talk about this perspective on that problem in particular. So I started off in the technology world, building the web office level, and working on my way all the way up to absolutely everybody's. Start off at the low level, work your way up, you can get a better understanding of how teams work together.
Even customers, right? Customer service makes a big deal. Again, like I said before, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but from the perspective of thinking that big picture, understanding what the customer feels is half the battle. So, yeah.
So whether your customer is, an actual customer, or if your customer may be the HR department, maybe some other employees within your organization. But I think that it's so valuable when you have people in positions leaders who have worked at the lower levels. One of the most frustrating things you'll come across in a lot of these organizations, especially once you hit the intermediate and senior levels on the technical side, is having to communicate with people in leadership who don't have a technical background, who don't understand engineering. I can't tell you how many CIOs I've worked with who don't know how network administration works. They don't really have a strong grasp on what these things, what these concepts actually are. And so you spend more time trying to explain it to them and trying to get support for projects that you know need to be implemented. It's frustrating, it's worth it, but
It's funny you mention that because you know how it works in the military, right? A couple people around, anybody can have a band, right?
well, Army is perfectly fit. Cyber Command is brand new, relatively brand new,
And just putting officers in to fill a lot of that, to fill it and whatnot. And it's difficult. And they say, if you're a leader, you can go in and lead anything. You ask the right questions, surround yourself by the right people. And that's somewhat true. As an example, well, to a degree. And let me just put it this way. So my role currently is more of a CTO role than a CIO role because we're primarily developing applications, securing those applications. VDAT handles all our infrastructure. I have the infrastructure background, so I'm a little weird in the software development realm. I don't know how to write code. I know how to build networks. I know how to secure networks from an engineering perspective. So, but at least I still know the terminology and understand the impact. So that's the point of sometimes it's okay and it just depends. And are you an advocate for your people? That's a huge thing. Even if you don't understand from like I don't understand software development. I have a director of software development and clown that way, right? Is Joe not a clown? I love Joe.
He's great.
He's smart. He's smart as hell. But I will always have his back. I understand his constraints at the high level. I understand what he needs, like training dollars, things like that, to give to people. So that's my job to empower him at that point too. So there is a little bit of
I think it's important that you made a good point. I'm on the recruiting and sales side of things, so I'm not technical at all. I recruit IT professionals such as yourselves, but the point you made around asking questions with students in the room, that's such an important point to treat your customer, like really get a deeper understanding of what it is that they do and how the technology that you support impacts them. It'll allow you to translate the point the gentleman in front of you made, the geek speak to the business speak, and ultimately bolster your credibility. So it's just, I see it across the spectrum as I'm talking to different individuals. It's almost as important as you're honing your technical skills to hone the people skills as well on that front. And I think it's important to note too, I've seen it on the sales side. I've been transitioning from recruiting and selling myself into leading a team of 21 people. There's times where I'm watching someone recruit, call them. Okay,
right.
It's that person. But it's important to know you're not going to get there without failing at times too. I'm sure none of the executives or leaders in this room got into this there that at least having one or two bumps in the road along the way because you learn from those people. Right? So exactly. So since we've got a lot of students here, I just thought some very good points were made around career progression. So
Jamie's staying, and I think he's trying to kick me out of here. So
This is great. I mean, collaboration and conversation. I think it's very thought-provoking. This is exactly what we're looking for this organization. Each time we have a meeting, to help challenge the members and build independence and hopefully educate and share experiences that some of us have had.
I want to make two quick notes, and then we can go back to questions if you want. But first off, the team of students will come and meet me after this is over with. I want to talk to you guys, and for anybody else who's been part, y'all want to grab that and link up to it. Okay. But we continue however way you want to go. I don't know what everyone's timeline. We
have about 30 minutes before they'll get us out. We don't really have anything else on our agenda except for around 9 to again about the blockchain conference. The elections for the chapter are moving to November because of the conference. We'll be reaching out to those on the committee with the job description. So if you have any thought about maybe participating as a leader of the chapter on the board, please come talk to us. We have openings. We need the support, whether it's a formal position or informal. We need people to help the chapter grow, get the message out there, help bring more students in. And our chapter challenge is about to wrap up at the end of next week. Well, next week, the 30th. And so the scholarship will be opening up. So we'll have information on our website about these, how to apply for the cybersecurity scholarships.
Who's on the election committee?
No, Reginald is too. And Granger too, right?
3, yeah.
No, but I'm
Well,
just
they
saying you were on
haven't
it. right?
met, so.
Yeah.
You're on the election committee? Okay, so 1, 2,
Jackie Harmon has also signed up for it.
Oh, I haven't seen her in a while. God, it's gotta be at least 8
We've been tied
years.
up with the blockchain conference, while we've elected to do the official voting until November, but we do want to have a conversation around. Again, we want to get people that are interested in helping the chapter